chance and welcome you all to the open source community of VIT-AP. I'll be here by the agenda of the today's meeting will be to get you introduced with our community of in VIT-AP, and then we will proceed with overall what is open source in on a whole, and then at the later part we will be moving with the Git session. So if someone can give me the confirmation that my screen is visible to all.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's nice. I'm getting quick responses and it's quite well being. So here we start. Open source community. OSC VITAB, it had been an integral part, and we had been one of the initial and prominent technical clubs from our university. And I take this opportunity on behalf of OSC VITAP. I'm the Adarsh Srivastava, technical lead of OSC, to welcome you all to this
technical
session
clubs from our
and to the upcoming year. And we look forward with many other events that we host to give you an initial experience, and with that a good baggage of knowledge that you can take forward and have a better future. We at OSC believe that with every day we should get some knowledge, apply it on the real backgrounds. So we are having frequent events. One of the major event that took last time before closing of the campus due to, of course, COVID, was our Software Freedom Day. That was a merger event that we conducted with the collaboration of the NEL Club. And it was a huge success. We had several talks from the industry experts, and also the web hunt was organized in merger. Then the winter season of code. That's a kind of a large event that we host every year, and there are codeathons and hackathons that we organize on a regular basis. The web hunt being like a USP of our events, we it's one of the hard-hitting online hunts where you find the answer, you crack the answer, or you cheat it. We don't matter. But what matters over there is how you give the answer in what time. So there are frequent events and then virtual seminars. Like now we are into the virtual world, but before also we had been inviting guests from all over the world, from the open source community or the technical fraternity, and then we had been given good guidance from them, and we happened to conduct competitions on an annual basis within our college with the different years, the freshers, the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and they all tend to get good awards. Of course, there is no learning without we appreciating yourself. So awards are a constant thing. We appreciate you when your efforts are there, and hence we just go on with all the ends. Hackathons and codeathons are constant. We have been conducting on the behalf of MLH, Mission Learn and Hack, and we had been associated with quite big industry leads. We had been collaborations with Mozilla, MLH, Coding Blocks, Give My Certificate, and many more. With in future also we look forward to getting more such collaborations so that we can give you the exposure that is required for the industry to move forward. So that's not enough. We believe at OSC that opportunities don't come in a plate. You have to garner that. So we have also opened and initiated a new branch that's Women in Open Source. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Yes,
Can I
sir.
get a quick response over here?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, okay. So I just got the response. So moving forward, introducing the second part of our community, that's the women in open source. We have a separate branch where you can get the women, the girl students of our university get the opportunities to access to many specifically reserved competition and scholarships, and WWC, that's Women Who Code events. So we welcome you to this community. And now, as I think that most of you comprise of the freshers, and this whole concept of open source is kind of new for you all. Am I right? So moving on to introduction for what is open source on a complete basis. So here it is. We move forward. The agenda for the coming slides would be what is open source, what's the history of this thing, and where and which companies or which platforms are applied over there, why we need this open source, and what are the differences between open source and the closed source services, or what we call the proprietary based services. And then we'll move forward how you can contribute to this. So what before approaching to the question is what is open source software development, we should first answer the thing that what is software development in fact at initial basis. To cut down to your basis, you are the first years, and you must be getting lessons in software development, uh, into touch with the different software development models, agile, waterfall, incremental. On a whole, these are basically classified into five stages. There's the requirement gathering. You gather requirements that the client wants, what the user uh, require. Is the agenda clear? There's someone asked for that. Okay. So here was the presentation I was talking about. I think it was not visible before. So moving on, what is software development on a whole? Speaking of different levels of it, the requirement gathering, the designing, you gather requirement, what the client wants, what the user wants. You design, sit with the team, how to approach to the solutions, how to cater to the demands, and then comes the stage of coding, where the hardcore coders or programmers sit down and from the paper they bring the idea into existence on performing on the different software platforms. And then when a draft or a sub ready product is ready, then it goes through a testing phase. And after the testing, the different level of testing, it is deployed into the market to the end customers, and frequent maintenance has to be taken care of. So if you got the idea of how the software development take place, now we can move forward to how it is classified into this open source and closed source thing. So going to the up to the technical textbook definition, in production and development, open source is a philosophy or methodology that promotes free redistribution and access to a product's design, ideas, and implementations. That's a very textbook heavy definition, full of keywords, and most of it might not strike your brain at first. So the criteria on which we define what is open source and what is closed source are these available on sheet. The source code. Whenever a product is developed, the finished product is delivered to the client, and then it is circulated to the customer. The source code in some cases, in case of the closed source or proprietary based services, is kept to the developmental company. It is not open to all. So the first criteria that comes for open source development is we keep it open to access to all of the people, uh, disregard to the employees of the company that is developing the project. Anyone can access it and create a own version of it. There can be derived versions of this, and then after you are complete it with your own version. For example, there is a application called ABC that is there in the market, and then you want to work on it, and you created a different version of, and you want to name it abc.adarsh. So that will be your own version of it. And then you can get it licensed, because uh, on the norms that are there on the Play Store or the App Store or the Microsoft Store, so you have to be getting licensed app if you want to go on the monetizing part or setting. And the most important is you have to keep the integrity of the other's source code. Like, okay, you are working on a code and getting its own version, but you should not play or hamper the real uh, methods that are involved and deployed in the real world. And there should be no to ensure that open source community is providing equally accessible opportunities to all the members of the community. There should be no discrimination against any person or field of groups or field of endeavor when the access is given to any kind of editing. Moving on to the next slide, the history of open source community. Speaking of first, no, it is not a computer generation idea. That is, what that implicates is that it's not like only last 30 or 20 30 years when the computer came into being or software programming was sparked, that open source thing came into idea. The term is right. The term open source had been coined in recent times, but this idea of collective development had been a thing of past. uh, so if you can recall ARPANET, the mother of internet, that we can call, it was developed because the ideas were well structured and uh, given access to a large community of developers, and that was resulted in the birth of internet. The term of open source was coined by uh, Richard M. Stallman at the networking summit in Palo Alto in California in 1998. And the seed of this thing, that why a product should be open to edit or work upon, or uh, a transparent system should be there, strike to Richard M. Stallman. He's a great that's a great name in the field of IT, and there have been many GML and GNU. There have been many uh, important discoveries and contribution from that person. Yeah. Manoj, as you mentioned, we will be giving the examples and all about open source and closed source. Just keep a track of time, and we will be moving on that. So, speaking of the history of open source, uh, he was a professor at MIT, and what happened that when he wanted to access to one of the computers and distribute the design of printer that was uh, designed by one of the professors of MIT, he was not allowed that permission. So he came up with the idea of developing an operating system, because that was his domain, that is not hiding anything from its users. And the big leap that was taken in the open source community was when the major corporate investment was done by IBM into Linux. Linux is the big bull here. Now comes the question, where is open source applied? The open source ideology is taken into consideration. As you can see on your screen, we have open source platforms in every domain. Be it Eclipse, that's the IDE you use for Java, web-based applications or system-based application. They get their versions reviewed by an open source community. Mozilla is a big example over there. Ubuntu, there's a whole operating system based on Unix and Linux, and that is in the larger market that has made it big after Microsoft and all. So what we should consider over here, that each and every project or product that is visible on your screen has a counterpart or good selling counterpart in the market that is using the closed source methodology. Speaking of Ubuntu, we have Microsoft. The source code of the operating system is not public to all. You can't access it, you can't edit it, you can't get your own version of Microsoft. Whereas in Ubuntu, you can have that privilege. Those of you who are in graphic designing must be aware of this logo over here. This is the GIMP, and it's a prominent go-to thing for those who are not proficient with Photoshop. So we have alternatives for everything. LibreOffice is there for Microsoft Office, and here this penguin that you are seeing Linux. Uh, this is one of the greatest advancements that we have witnessed in the history of open source. And MySQL, before getting approached by Oracle, uh, the main purpose of this sellover was to make it affordable on the part of company, that it can be continued with its open to accept the change policy. And Trello, that's a web application or a software development tool that keep track of all your proceedings when you follow the agile development model or any other specific development model. Speaking of a specific example, Android, it's a regular thing. You you open your phone, you find the first OS and the most prominent OS in the market of the touchscreen devices is Android. Why it happened? Because the mere fact that this Linux-based OS made it so big, but because of the flexibility that it was giving to the developers, the device companies, and the users to get their purposes solved. At present, we have over 3 million apps over there on based on Android, and more than a billions of download. And Google takes it pridely to give the source code uh, public, and you can use that to understand architecture of the OS, the security, and test devices. We should consider this thing that just for instance, in a mechanical company based on mining, there is a department that is manufacturing uh, vehicles or digging equipment
in a
to
mechanical
dig
company
through big
or
mountains and big rocks. But if the motive of the company is only to dig and make the same product day after day, then the company or the overall industry will not develop on a whole. But they have an R&D, the research and development team over there, and they go on to explore many options that are available for the company to explore, and then they grab over the ideas and proceed upon it. Open source gives you the similar platforms for the software technologies, because people treat it like an R&D system and an R&D mechanism where there's a community of developers that gather upon, work together over a single platform, and bring out the best of it. The big question over here is, as I answered, there are numerous advantages of using the open source community and platforms that are being part of this community. The first and major is the learning possibilities. Oh, it's okay if you are not a developer. It's okay if you are not in uh, software deployment company. But if you get access to say WhatsApp source code as a budding programmer, you will get the knowledge of how different APIs, different modules are being designed and developed uh, by the owner company, and then you can in future develop your own application. The support, the community support that is offered in through open source is a major advantage, because be it any closed source company, uh, whenever development process takes place, the things are distributed and discussed on an isolation in a specific number of people who are in the development team or the research team, and it doesn't get the product doesn't get the exposure to a larger crowd before it is into the market. So the technical support that OS can operating open source can offer is humongous. The bug fixing and any feedback mechanism. As you can see, the workflow model of open source platforms, it is the developer. He makes a compiled program, a complete product, and also deploys the source code into the public domain. Then there are developers around the world, all the users who apply their knowledge, give their inputs in the product, and then like this one input, two input, three input, and getting a later editing and advances. When these all are compiled, you get a better product at the end. Or speaking of other privileges that comes along with the OSC is the cost. As the work is distributed to countless people over the world, the cost is getting very low. You don't have to get it specified to a definite team with a high paying salaries, because there are freelancing people over there in the community who can contribute to a project and get their knowledge and their experience on that part. And the auditing, that's a plus bonus on that. So, as you were asking the doubts upon discussion about the open versus closed. So these are the trademark logos for closed source and open source. The source code, that is the soul of any software project, is kept confidential in the closed proprietary based project company, and hence it doesn't give the user the privilege to edit it. It is useful in many cases. Take the instance of Apple. The iOS source code is not public to the users or developers over the world, and that actually contributes to the privacy and the security that it offers, and that is a USP of iPhone Apple products. Also, open source software, as I told you before, the development community is so large that the phase of evolution of the product keeps on going and on. And with the number of advantages of open source community, there does come the disadvantage. You know, the integrity that is of the source code, that on what basis the original developer developed the product, that may suffer because there are programmers who attempt malicious intentions with them, and they often get into some malicious operations over the code and malign the product. Also, one major drawback over here is the financial uh, benefits. You can't get a much focused financial benefit from an open source product that you are deploying in the market, because with the motive that you are deploying, for example, I'm after 6 months of work, if I'm giving a uh, education based application, edtech application into the market, and I'm keeping it the source code and everything available on plate for all the developers to contribute. I can't expect my users to uh, pay me on that basis, because there are frequent changes involved. And on the other hand, the closed source companies, they have their proprietary clauses, and they get the revenue models are quite well circulated and well maintained. And as I told you before, there is numerous products available now. In every domain, we have the open source based projects. In application software, the Chromium, Blender, Mozilla Firefox, these are the big names. GIMP, I told you before, that's the counterpart for Photoshop. And operating systems, Android, Linux, FreeBSD, Haiku. DOS, that was a initial product of Microsoft. That's a big name for in program open source. And coming to programming languages, be it any, the scripting languages, the front end, in every part we have this OS open source based languages, PHP and Python, and to name a few. And then I'm open for questions. If anyone, any of you have, and then we can move forward to the Git series that we have organized. That is the prime agenda for today. So, yeah, if anyone has